We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of Free Association Radio. I'm Robert Phoenix, and you are you the last time you checked, although that is always a shifting topography at times, because sometimes, well, theoretically you are you all the time, but every now and then you do things that aren't quite you. You got to figure out how to reset the clock or reset the meter and then get back to you again. But that's a metaphysical conundrum for another time. Right now, we're going to be talking about a couple of different things, or I'm going to be talking about a couple of different things today. The first thing I'm going to talk about, excuse me, is Hurricane Isaac and what's happening down in the Gulf of Mexico. And then I'm going to talk about Lance Armstrong, Neil Armstrong, and what that means for, excuse me, you and I here in America at a meta level, and as it relates to excuse me, some other things happening in the world of athletics and sports, and particularly a man by the name of Usain Bolt. But first, let's get into this hurricane. If you go into the chat room right now, see if you're listening to the show live, you can go into the chat room and you can look at the link that I put up in the chat room. This was a HAARP signature from yesterday. The name of the website is harpstatus.com, which is a pretty interesting website, and you can find out what's going on with HAARP, and it's endorsed by Space Weather, whatever that means. If you tend to follow space weather and a lot of the solar flare activity and coronal mass ejection info, then you can dig harpstatus.com. So check it out. What I have is the latest signature from, I think it was yesterday. And based on what we're seeing with that image of HAARP activity, it is extremely potent, and it looks like HAARP is now steering Isaac. If you believe in HAARP, and I believe in HAARP, okay, HAARP is very real, and weather modification and geoengineering are very, very real. And you can actually see where, Isaac was actually supposed to hit Florida. I mean, it's headed right towards the GOP convention, which they canceled yesterday. Quite interesting. This was on the heels of Ron Paul's very electrifying and inspiring speech to the GOP. I think Ron Paul's a Freemason, by the way. If you don't know that, figure it out. He's a Freemason. Ron Paul's in on the game, and he has always been controlled opposition for people that are angry, upset, and want their freedoms back. That's what Ron Paul is. That's what Ron Paul does. Do I think he's a bad man? Not necessarily. I think Ron Paul has actually some pretty decent qualities, but Ron Paul is in on the game. He's in on the game. He named his kid after Ayn Rand, and Ayn Rand is definitely in on the game in a very big way. Also, maybe I'll talk about Ayn Rand at some point, but I'm working on a piece on Ayn Rand as it relates to astrology, as it relates to the inception of the libertarian movement, and how the libertarian movement is actually a very fascinating meme for Luciferian. Well, I'll get into that at another point in time. But let's talk more about Isaac now. It looks like, I'm going to read this. This is the latest on Isaac. Let's see what we got here today. It says, this is from USA Today. This was just an hour ago, so this is fresh off the wire. Predictions of Tropical Storm Isaac making landfall along the Gulf Coast on Tuesday prompted evacuations along a wide area of the region as many residents recalled the devastation of Hurricane Katrina 7 years ago. Residents began stockpiling food, water, and other staples. Lines at gas stations were growing, and airlines began canceling flights to and from the area as the size of the storm expanded, and officials declared emergencies in 4 states. Count them, 4 states. Hold on a second here. Let me see this. Okay. By late Monday morning, Isaac had sustained winds of 65 miles per hour and was located about 310 miles southeast of the mouth of the Mississippi River. The National Hurricane Center reported it was moving to the northwest at 14 miles per hour. The storm is expected to reach hurricane status with wind speeds of 75 miles per hour by sometime Monday night. At landfall, which is expected somewhere between 11 p.m. Tuesday and 11 p.m. Wednesday, the hurricane should have winds around 90 miles per hour, which means it should hit as a Category 1 or Category 2 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson wind scale, the Hurricane Center reported. The National Hurricane Center predicted Isaac would hit late somewhere along a roughly 300-mile stretch from the bayou southwest of New Orleans to the Florida Panhandle. Katrina destroyed about 80% of New Orleans and killed about 1,800 people across the Gulf Coast. I gassed up truck and generator, John Corrill, 59, of Carpenter said as he left a New Orleans coffee shop Monday morning. He lived through Katrina in 2005 and was expecting a weaker storm this time, adding that he thinks the levee system is in better shape. Well, it's got to be in better shape because they blew the levee system last time to handle a storm surge than when Katrina hit. I think the state and local governments are much better prepared for the storm surge and emergencies, Corrill said. On the Alabama coast, Billy Cannon, 72, was preparing to evacuate with several cars packed with the family and 4 chihuahuas from a home on a peninsula in Gulf Shores. Cannon, who has lived on the coast for 30 years, said he thinks the order to evacuate Monday was premature. If it comes in, it's just going to be a big rainstorm. I think they overreacted, but I understand where they're coming from. It's a safety, he said. In Grand Isle, a barrier island about 100 miles south of New Orleans, residents latched down homes and drove out boats as a mandatory evacuation was ordered for the island. Isaac's fickle path has made it difficult to advise residents when they should leave and where they should go, Councilman Jay LaFont said. That's a fickle path. This has been a really challenging one, he said. The storm that left 8 dead in Haiti and 2 dead in the Dominican Republic blew past the Florida Keys with little damage and promised a drenching, but little more for Tampa when the planned Monday start of the Republican National Convention, which pushed back a day in case Isaac passed closer to the Bayside City. Nearly every major U.S. airline has instituted some sort of flexible rebooking policy for travelers headed to Florida and portions of the U.S. Gulf Coast as Isaac tracks in that direction. Several airlines, including Delta, United, and U.S. Airways, have now extended their rebooking waivers beyond Florida to other Gulf Coast airports in Alabama and Louisiana. Airlines were expected to cancel at least 180 flights on Monday. More than 740 flights were canceled on Sunday. The tally is only likely to grow during the next 48 hours. Amtrak canceled train service to Louisiana for Tuesday and Wednesday. The route that runs from New York to New Orleans would end in Atlanta, while its route from Los Angeles to New Orleans would stop in San Antonio. Amtrak is also suspending part of its rail between Miami and Florida. So New Orleans is getting isolated again. Now, whether or not this storm, this hurricane hits in a completely devastating way, New Orleans is being cut off. It's being cut off from travel right now, in and out. So keep your eyes on that. If it hits during high tide, Isaac could push floodwaters as deep as 12 feet onto the shore in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, and up to 6 feet in the Florida Panhandle, dumping up to 18 inches of rain over the region. Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal called a state of emergency, and 50,000 residents of St. Charles Parish near New Orleans were told to leave ahead of the storm. Mississippi Governor Phil Bryant, Florida Governor Rick Scott, Alabama Governor Robert Bentley also declared states of emergency. Heavy flooding could be devastating to low-lying coastal communities like Vermilion and Iberia parishes in Louisiana that were heavily damaged by storm surge during Hurricane Rita in 2005 and again by Hurricane Ike in 2008. Ike, isn't Ike a derivation of Isaac? That's an interesting piece to note. We're going to get into Isaac too, by the way, the name Isaac. It's an interesting name from the Bible. Most residents have rebuilt, but not all. A lot of people are prepared, but there are some that are not elevated. Broussard said they're still waiting for insurance or FEMA money. Can you believe that? These people are waiting for insurance and FEMA money from Katrina. Man. Officials of Plaquemines Parish, 10 miles south of New Orleans, were not taking any chances. They ordered mandatory evacuation for most of the southern part of the parish. Work crews recently raised levees in that area, but there will be no match for a strong surge from Isaac, Parish President Billy Nungesser said. Billy Nungesser, by the way, very prominent person during the BP spill with Plaquemines Parish. And we're going to talk about BP here because I'll tell you right now, BP and all the core exit that they're dumping in the ocean, guess what? It gets to come ashore. It gets to be stirred up and sucked into Isaac and brought onto land in a very, well, I wouldn't say deliberate, but it's let's just say that there seems to be an intelligence behind Isaac. So this is going to be troublesome, I believe, not just from a logistics standpoint with the water and the wind, but also what is actually in the water. And this is going to bear watching 1 to 2 to 3 weeks out from Isaac. It could be a carrier of significant contagion. Speaking of contagion, have you noticed that the whole zombie thing kind of went away for a little bit? It's interesting, huh? It's like there were tons of zombies and the zombie sightings and the weirdness, and then nothing. Why is that? Well, I have my theories. I think that they were testing out technology on people, targeting people and turning them into zombies based on whatever kinds of macrophages, nanoarrays that were floating around their bodies thanks to chemtrails. And I think that little testing period had abated. So they got their R&D, and now they're going to back off, and we're going to put the zombie apocalypse on hold. But back to Isaac. This is going to bear watching. The other thing that's been happening, I don't know how many of you have been paying attention to this, but in Southern California, especially San Diego, they've had at least 100 earthquakes in the past 24 hours. And we're talking earthquakes of varying sizes, everything from 5.4 to 1.2. I mean, Southern California, especially the San Diego area, has been one consistent tremor. I was talking to a friend this morning, and she was awoken by another earthquake this morning when she was in bed. And there were two very significant earthquakes yesterday. In fact, I was at a pub here in town. I was watching a football game, and the bartender had an app for her iPhone. It's an earthquake app, and every time an earthquake would happen, her phone would buzz. And we're sitting there, and this is all about San Diego, and it was like a slot machine. It's like, there's another one, there's another one, there's another one. It was pretty intense to watch this happen. So if you do the math now, San Diego is part of this whole southern band of the United States, and that's where, San Diego is on the San Andreas Fault. In New Orleans, Mississippi, Alabama, all these areas are on the New Madrid Fault. But it seems to me like all across the southern band, there is significant activity going on, from the earthquakes in San Diego to Isaac, who again appears to be growing and being steered, and potentially by a HAARP signature or through HAARP, is also taking place. So what's going on there? Is this a whole series of earth changes that are trying to be triggered right now as we speak? Is that what we're witnessing? Is it again part of this plan to wash ashore hundreds and thousands of gallons, millions of gallons of water that's toxified by core exit coming into the water systems of those areas in the south? Is that what we're looking at as well? There's also the giant sinkhole in Assumption Parrish, which is not far from New Orleans. This sinkhole is like a pit from hell. It's like a total pit from hell, and it appears to be radioactive. They're getting very strong radioactive signals out of this sinkhole, and it's growing, this sinkhole. So now you've got Isaac on top of the sinkhole from hell, on top of the earth activity happening in San Diego and all throughout the Southwest. This bears watching over the next few days. Now, we don't want to get freaked out. We don't want to, get into fear and paranoia, but it's important to be aware of this and to kind of, maybe track it as it's actually going off in real time. And it gets back to this whole notion of, are we, how much do we allow ourselves to be played by the signal in mass media or the signal of the world, and how much do we adhere to our own signal and find something clear and resonant inside of ourselves, so that we're not necessarily, bothered or buffeted about by these distractions, by these forces. That's an individual question for each person. Okay, some people can handle more than others. I apparently can handle a fair amount because I don't necessarily walk away from this stuff. But for other people, it gets very intense, and they can only take so much, and that's okay. So you got to figure out, where your signal gets really distorted, and I do my best to be as objective as possible and look at this stuff as clear as possible. But at the same time, I'm also perceiving, patterns and trying to understand, how this is going to impact us. So for people in the South, obviously the biggest concern is going to be physical damage, but it's also going to be, what this brings to land and how it's going to impact them. So there you go. This is the update on Isaac. Isaac is an interesting character from the Bible. He's the son of Abraham. And the story, it's a great story in the Bible. If you don't know the story, it goes like this. Yahweh, good old Yahweh, tells Abraham to take his son out and bind him up and kill him. I think that that's an amazing story. How does that happen? It's like, Abraham, this is Yahweh. Remember me? Abraham, I need you to take that cute little boy, Isaac, the one you love so dearly. I want you to take him out. Take him out to the temple, Abraham. I don't want you to bind him. And at my command, I want you to kill him. Am I clear, Abraham? I mean, is that how it happened? I mean, think about that. And Abraham's like, oh, geez, okay, Yahweh, I guess, ooh, boy, you are God, and I am supposed to be faithful and listen to you, and, well, that's a really crazy idea you got there, but I guess if I'm going to really follow you and be faithful, well, I'll just have to kill my son. Okay. It's going to really hurt me, but my allegiance to you is greater than my allegiance to my own flesh and blood. All right. So then Abraham goes out there, and, there's little Isaac all bound up, looking at his dad with his very innocent eyes. And it's like, Daddy, what are you doing? Well, Isaac, I have to kill you. Well, why, Daddy? Well, Isaac, because Yahweh told me to. But, Daddy, that's insane. Well, I know, Isaac, but an invisible being told me that that's what I had to do. And, this invisible being has given us so much that if I don't do that, it will anger this invisible being. And, well, the wrath upon my soul it's much more important than your physical body. So, in this instance, I'm sorry, but you're the one that has to go. But, Daddy, I love you. I know you do, son, and I love you too. But this is really the best for both of us. And just as Isaac is about to be slaughtered at the hand of Abraham, an angel comes in and says, whoa, 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 hold on. Abraham, you've proven your faith. You're a good soldier for Yahweh. Guess what? You don't have to kill your kid. Isn't that cool? Give me 5. Give me 5. Give it up. Come on. Give it up. Abraham gives him 5. Whew. But, you can't let a good opportunity for a ritual slaughter to just go by the wayside. You see that ram over there? Go kill that ram instead. Come on. Get it out of your system. You're still a little bloodthirsty. Come on, just get it out of your system. Yahweh will love it. He'll love it. Yeah, I mean, really, maybe you don't have to do it, but trust me, if you do it, he'll really love it. So he goes over there, Matt. Wait, there goes the ram. And then Isaac is taken away, unbound, where he will eventually grow up and marry Rebecula and have his own brood after he prays for her to become pregnant, because she hasn't become pregnant for quite a while. And so they sit down and they cook the ram. And they're sitting around the fire and they're eating ram and pulling the meat off the bones. And Isaac says to Abraham, Dad, you really had me worried there for a moment. That was really bizarre. You were going to kill me. And Abraham takes a little bite out of the ram. He says, son, you're right. I might have been a little over the top, but I got to tell you, when Yahweh speaks, we listen. And even though he's an invisible God, that voice was very clear to me. And I'm just glad that the archangel saved you, because, quite frankly, I really love you, son, so please forgive me. No problem, Dad. Pass me some more mutton. There we go. That's how it goes in the Bible, and this is some of the theology that we are living with. I mean, on the surface, that's really insane. By the way, that whole scene is replayed in a movie called The Rapture, which I highly, highly, highly recommend. It's a great movie. It's a creepy film. It's a dark movie, but I highly recommend it. There's a scene where Mimi Rogers, one of Tom Cruise's ex-wives, plays essentially an Abrahamic character. And she is told by God to kill her daughter in the desert. This is out in like Joshua Tree or someplace like that. And she does. And there's no angel that comes in at the last moment and says, yo, wait, don't do that. No, it happens. So she kills her, hold on a second. There you go, breaking here. Sorry about that. She kills her daughter. And she sees her daughter in the afterlife after the rapture has happened. So this brings up I've told this story before. I'll tell it again though. This goes back to O.J. Simpson. But there's another part of the story that I did not tell. So one day I was helping a friend move in San Francisco, and she had a friend who was there, and this guy who I knew the guy. He was a very earnest individual, meaning he wasn't a bullshitter. Okay, this guy was not a bullshitter, and he brought us all aside. He said, this friend of my wife's told me this really interesting story. I was like, okay, what is it? She said, well, she had a friend who was driving down Highway 5. And Highway 5 is this big highway that goes between San Francisco and Los Angeles. And her friend was driving down Highway 5, and all of a sudden, there was a bright light that came out of the sky. And out of that light appeared an angel. And the angel said to her that in 10 days, the first trumpet will sound. And this incident freaked this woman out. And she, because of the light, because of the intensity, because of the message, she was driving erratically, and there was a CHP officer on the highway, and he pulled her over. And he told her the story. Actually, she told him the story. She told him the story about what happened. He asked if she was okay, blah, 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 blah. And she said, well, you won't believe this, but there was a really bright light. There was something that looked like an angel. Said within the next 10 days, the first trumpet would sound. And he said to her, you're the fifth person that's told me that story today. So I did the math. This is a little bit after the fact. I did the math on this. And 10 days after this had occurred, this is when O.J. Simpson drove his white Bronco down the 405. And this is when I realized that was the first trumpet of the apocalypse. And the white Bronco was the pale horse. Behold the pale horse. It was the white Bronco. It's exactly what it was. And if you watch the movie, The Rapture, you'll see, and I've talked about this before, you'll see in the final scenes of The Rapture while they're in jail, there are TVs in the jail, and on the TV is footage of the USC Trojans. It's a football game, and the Trojans are playing. And what team did O.J. Simpson play for? The Trojans. And then right in the middle of the game, Gabriel appears on the TV and on his pale horse blows the horn. He looks like a Trojan, by the way. He blows the horn. It's the first horn of apocalypse. So anyway, I'm just sharing this with you as kind of a very strange synchronicity as it relates to the movie The Rapture and as it relates to Isaac and Abraham and the psychotic tale of killing one's child, which I find utterly bizarre. Okay, so there we go. Keep your eyes on Isaac. Keep your eyes on the coast, the coastal regions, and the southern part of the United States where the New Madrid fault is having a very hard time unstable time, being fracked and fractured and fucked with and fragmented. So keep your eyes on that. And if you are religious, truly religious, say a prayer for those people down there. And the people in San Diego as well. Let's talk a little bit about Lance Armstrong. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. So over the course of the last week, there's been a lot of news about athletes using performance-enhancing drugs. And that would include Melky Cabrera, who was leading the National League, actually, I think baseball in general, in hitting. He was having one of the greatest seasons in recent memory in terms of hits. And Melky was a guy who was a mediocre player, who actually had some promise when he came up with the Yankees, but was hanging out a lot with Robinson Cano and all these other Yankee players and partying quite a bit. So they traded him. They traded him to Atlanta. And he was terrible in Atlanta. He was actually despised in Atlanta. And then Atlanta traded him to Kansas City, and that was last year, and he had a rebound year and played quite well. He was really starting to hit the ball. And the Giants traded one of their scrubs for Melky. Melky came in and was remarkable. Every week, Melky was doing something pretty astounding. A 2-hit game, a 3-hit game, hitting for the cycle. You know, he was the MVP of the All-Star game. You know, home run, knocked in 2 runs. I mean, this is the face of baseball. He was the MVP, the best player at the showcase for baseball's best players. So one could say that on that day, he was the best player in baseball. And shockingly, they found that he was using synthetic testosterone, which most Major League Baseball players do, by the way. A dirty secret. I would tell you about the testing, but it would bore you. A few days later, just across the bay, the team that I follow, Bartolo Colon, the 39-year-old pitcher from the Dominican, he tested for the same stuff. Now the Bay Area has this chemical taint on it from these 2 players, Melky and Bartolo. Well, you have to hit the trifecta, and the trifecta is Lance Armstrong. And Lance Armstrong threw in the towel, which is something that Lance Armstrong does not do. If you know anything about Lance Armstrong, from beating testicular cancer to winning 7 Tour de France's, he didn't throw in the towel at any stretch along the way. And yet, as he was staring down the anti-doping administration, he said, essentially, that I am tired. I'm tired of being hounded. I'm tired of having to defend myself over and over again. Here, take the medals. I don't care. My sanity is more important than winning or trying to win against you when you have all the resources in the world. There's some truth to that. The other truth to it is that all those guys on his team were not fans of his. They didn't like him. One in particular, Tyler Hamilton, Pisces, opposite Lance Armstrong, Virgo, really didn't like him. So there was a sentiment on that team, the U.S. Postal team, that they were not thrilled with how Lance treated them. Because the weird thing about cycling is that there's the guy that wins, and then there's the other guys that do all the dirty work for the guy that wins. They block other riders, they draft, they do all these things for their one guy to win. And Lance was that one guy. Why? Because he was faster. He was faster than everybody else. So maybe if he'd been a nicer person, maybe it would have, I don't know, they would have had They would have been less contentious. But the other piece around this too is that there's this U.S. doping agency. I just think it's insane, to be honest with you. All these agencies are overseen by Eric Holder, who's the Attorney General. And this is an election year. And Lance Armstrong is a Republican. He's a dyed-in-the-wool Texas Republican. And he also happens to be white. And as we know, on both sides of the ledger sheet in this selection, race has become an undercurrent. It's become a subversive theme on both sides. So now what we have with Lance Armstrong is, oh, look at the white guy. Look at the iconic white guy cheater. Look, he's been taken down. Oh, yeah. This symbol of America taken down. Now, on both sides of the ledger sheet, it's like, you know, theoretically, if you're white, you're like, this is fucked up. You know, if you're not white, it's like, yeah, man, look at that. It's another white guy, another white liar. It's very insidious, this stuff. Very, very insidious. And it comes from both sides. And all this happened just prior to the GOP selection, the convention. And I think there's more to it than that. Who passed away just a day after Lance Armstrong lost his medals? Neil Armstrong. Neil Armstrong, another icon, another American icon. The man who supposedly set foot on the moon. One of the last heroes, really, by the way, untainted, perhaps. He's gone. I mean, think about America. How many heroes really have we had over the last, I mean, real heroes, not fake heroes, not phony franchise heroes, but real heroes? Not many. Not many at all. People are craving for heroes, by the way. They crave someone who will stand up for something that their morality can digest and relate to. So now you have both Armstrongs gone in some way, right? One had all of his medals, 7, by the way, 7 medals stripped from him, and the other being the first man, American, who set foot on the moon. What does that mean? Well, to me, they are symbols of America. And if you go back in time, you'll see that there was a character named Jack Armstrong who was the all-American boy. And this was a radio character. And he was kind of along the lines of Captain America, but without a mask, you know. And he was heroic, and he stood for all of these American values, and he helped people, and he dealt with the evildoers and the criminals. And it was always a patriotic and moral directive that came from the Jack Armstrong episodes. Maybe I'll play one of these days. I should have played one for this show, or part of it. So anyway, Jack Armstrong, the name Armstrong has been synonymous with America. You know, Armstrong. You know, this is the country that can do, that we are strong, that we use our limbs in order to build a nation. That's what it's all about. And now when you have Lance Armstrong stripped and Neil Armstrong dead, for me, this is symbolic of the death of America. This is what this is about. Pay close attention. the stripping of Lance Armstrong, and the death of Neil Armstrong, all within 48 hours prior to the GOP convention, is a clear signal that we are being prepared to witness the death of America on some level, okay? That's what this is about. Now, what's really interesting is that in the wake of Lance Armstrong being stripped of his medals, well, who is the most popular athlete in the world right now? I would venture to say it's Usain Bolt, who won 3 gold medals. Not Michael Phelps, by the way, who might have his medal stripped too for posing in some kind of a Louis Vuitton ad. No, it's going to be Usain Bolt for the 3 gold medals that he won at the Olympics. And not just winning, but winning in a dominant fashion, crushing the competition. There was nobody even close to Usain Bolt in any of those races. Carl Lewis, who was an American sprinter, brought up this notion that there's no way that Usain Bolt could be that fast without any kind of help. Not only that, but if you look at Usain Bolt's times, he went from being fast to super fast, really fast, like insanely fast. And Carl Lewis says you don't go from being fast to insanely fast without help. Now, he's right. Carl Lewis is absolutely right on this. You don't, because if you look at sprinters, they're generally very close on their times. Most of them separated by 0.2 or 0.3 of a second. They're that close. And they've been that close for quite a while, right? The 100 meters was always maybe about a 9.1, 9.0 exercise in sprints, right? That's what the 100 meters was. And I don't know what Usain Bolt's time was, because I really didn't follow Olympics, but I know it was a world record, right? He owns a world record. And it's not even close. It's like Ben Johnson. Remember Ben Johnson, the Canadian? Ben Johnson, the Canadian, who was the first person to get severely popped due to performance-enhancing drugs. Ben Johnson's times were off the charts. They weren't even close to anybody else. Usain Bolt is in the same category as Ben Johnson. And Carl Lewis would know this because Carl Lewis raced against Ben Johnson. So if you get into Usain Bolt just a little bit, then you begin to see some very interesting things emerge. For instance, my good friend Darren Williams, who was on this show a couple of weeks ago, sent me a video of Usain Bolt DJing. You can find it out there. He's DJing. He's a DJ. And if you look at his hand, on his right hand, he's got a big fat Freemasonic ring on his right hand. So Usain Bolt's a Freemason. If you watch him in the winning the 200 meters, he has his finger across his lips, like shh, shh. It's a secret, which is, as we all know, a very significant sign. And then there's the photo with him and it was a Swedish, I don't know, with the handball team or whatever they were, the 3 women. And they have the Va symbol over their eyes, right? So it'd be the 2 fingers across the bridge of the nose, and then 1 finger on one side of the eye, 1 finger on the other side of the eye. There's 3 of them. And Va, by the way, is 6. And it's 6, the number 6. In the Kabbalah, and you have 666. So Usain Bolt, and this whole vaulting thing, it's just, he's been launched into the stratosphere as the heroic figure that we are supposed to emulate or look up to. And it's ironic because, I'm going to say, I'm going to go on record, based on what Carl Lewis has said, I agree with Carl Lewis. I agree with Carl Lewis. I think Usain Bolt is using some form of performance-enhancing drug. And because he is affiliated with these groups, he's allowed to be passed through. That's my take. That he's been enabled to achieve this level of superstardom and iconography. And even though the two events do not seem to be connected, trust me, the stripping away and the humiliation of Lance Armstrong and the rise of Usain Bolt are very connected. And I'm not a huge Lance Armstrong fan. I could really care less. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of the whole scene, especially because everybody was doping up. Are you kidding me? So I'm not saying that Lance Armstrong is a great guy or this doesn't deserve to happen to him or any of those things. I'm just sharing with you the facts as I see them and the patterns as I see them. So here we go. The Armstrong meme is out there. It's in the public. It is the death of America. This is what we're now seeing. Both men were heroes. Both men are dead. One metaphorically, the other physically. And I believe that this is a very strong symbolic event right now that we need to pay attention to. What's interesting is that Livestrong, in the face of all this, Lance Armstrong's foundation has received a record number of pledges, and none of his mainstay corporate sponsors have strayed. They've all stood by him. Nike and all the other, big boys in that world, they're all with him still. So, it's interesting. The whole thing is really interesting and bizarre. And don't they have something else better to do than to spend our money stripping this guy of his medals? So fucking what? It is completely and utterly hypocritical. They're working on these super soldiers, and they're binding DNA with nanotech, and they're creating these new variant synthetic strands of hypertensile flesh and all that stuff. Yeah, that's happening. That's totally happening. They're creating. This is what they're doing. Captain America, by the way, is the early meme of the super soldier from the 1940s, using Nazi technology to turn Captain America into this super soldier fighting machine. So take a walk with me into the future for a second. It will not be considered uncommon in the ranks of the super soldier to have super high tensile skin. Talk about crazy. I mean, they won't even have to create the armature for these guys. They'll have it in their bodies. Yeah, that's right. They'll have super high tensile skin in their bodies. Imagine being able to weave Kevlar together with human tissue. That's happening. That's on its way. And so a bullet would hit you, and guess what? It bounce off you. I leave a bruise. This is all taking place right now as I speak. And yet they are hand-wringing over the fact that some guy used some drug that everybody else was using during the same time, and 7 years after the fact. Oh my God, can you please spare me? Spare me. You've got people in Hollywood who use HGH, synthetic testosterone, goat embryos, you name it, they'll use anything in order to retain their youth and their looks. We've got, I listen to sports talk radio. Every other commercial is about male testosterone. You know, if you're past 40, you'll be experiencing shortness of breath, shrinking of your penis, and the inability to remember anything. Your life will go to hell in a handbasket, and you'll be fat. And if you want to get rid of that stomach fat and, you know, give the ladies what they want, then you need to enhance your testosterone. I mean, that's every other commercial on the radio, sports talk radio. And yet, he tried to increase his testosterone. Melky Cabrera tried to increase his testosterone. And they're penalized for it. And they're professionals. Let them freaking increase their testosterone. They're professionals. Who cares? You know, it's insane. The level of insanity is just, it's off the charts. So as a father, you know, I got to tell my kid, what happened to Milky? Well, son, the human body creates this thing called testosterone. And you're a guy, and I'm a guy, and we have testosterone. And, you know, if you want to get really strong, you need more testosterone. And that's what Melky did. He was looking for an advantage. And I said, everybody that does sports looks for an advantage. I guess that was good enough for him. He's more concerned about players getting traded than getting suspended for testosterone. What a strange world we live in. It's utterly, utterly bizarre and getting stranger all the time. Okay, I think that's it. I'm not going to... astrologically, Mars, Scorpio. Yeah, Sun in Virgo. Mars, Scorpio, very intense. Super intense. It has the power, the real power to get to the bottom of things. Get to the bottom of things. Speaking of getting to the bottom of things, there are a bunch of photos apparently of Prince Harry in the nude in Las Vegas. They're strange. The whole thing is him being there is really strange. The photos that I saw were creepy, to be honest with you. It was him, this big black guy. I don't know who the black guy was, but he had man boobs. And about half a dozen girls in bikinis in the back of, or in the bowels of some hotel somewhere. It's just odd. I mean, he's dressed up he's wearing Hawaiian shorts, a straw hat, sunglasses, he's got a cocktail, and it looks like he's on the set of THX 1138. I mean, it's like white, you know, white floors, white walls, there's no water around. Maybe they're going somewhere to go to the hidden underground beach, you know, beneath the casino and the hotel. But those pictures are creepy. But apparently there's other pictures that the royal family is not thrilled about. Big pictures that make Harry, that shed a poor light upon the royal family. And I read about this on, I think it was the Times UK online. And normally you can actually put comments into the comment field. And they said, due to legal issues, comments for this story have been suspended. So you can't even comment on that story. Isn't that great? Due to legal issues. I wonder what those legal issues might be. Anyway, if you want a good diversion, if you want a good distraction, keep your eye on the Harry scandal. When Saturn goes into Scorpio, it will eventually transit over Queen Elizabeth's Saturn in Scorpio. She'll be going through her third Saturn return. And her Saturn in Scorpio is part of a giant T-square. And it's right at the top of her chart. It's right at the midheaven. Should be an interesting time for old Queenie. Okay, that's it. Thank you for tuning in and listening today. Keep your eyes on Isaac. Keep your eyes on the south, especially the whole southern band from San Diego all the way across to the Florida Keys. And not much more else. Sit back and watch the dog and pony show that is Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan. And, of course, the Obama Express, which is cruising right alongside it. Always interesting theater, for sure. Somebody wanted to talk. Oh, hold on, let me see. We got a few minutes left. Hold on. Hello there. Hello? Are you just listening? Hello, hello? Apparently so. All right, I'm never quite sure. People like to call in and listen. That's fine. All right, so I will see you on Wednesday, and I'll be cruising around the stars, doing readings. We'll be looking more at this Mars and Scorpio effect and the upcoming shift with Saturn and Scorpio. We got another blue moon coming our way on the 31st. See, it's the second full moon we're going to have in the month of August. It's a blue moon. We'll talk about that too. All right, so you know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real. Your heart is open what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. You are you, and thank you for being a part of this. I will see you on Wednesday. Adios.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.